72 éve, 1947-ben szövevényes belpolitikai háttér miatt kényszerült emigrációba Nagy Ferenc miniszterelnök és a családja. Tervezte, de az 1979. június 12-i váratlan halála miatt soha nem térhetett vissza a szülőföldjére. A hamvai a családi sírhelyen az amerikai Virginia államban vannak. A kisgazdapárti politikus halálának 40. évfordulója alkalmából 2019. júniusban Magyarországon, a Baranya megyei Visse községben, a szülőházánál volt megemlékezés. A kétrészes dokumentumfilm a családtörténet eddig nem ismert részeit igyekszik feltárni. Amerikai Egyesült Államok, New York, 2022. szeptember 17-e, szombat és dél van. Ezelőtt 75 évvel érkezett a kontinensre a Magyarországról, a ma már csak alig 300 lelkes településről, Bisséről, Nagy Ferenc, korábbi kisgazda miniszterelnök és családja. A politikai életútja tele van eddig fel nem tárt részekkel. 21.500 irathagyaték, tétel van jelenleg is itt New Yorkban, a Columbia Egyetem könyvtárában. Tartalmilag, történelmileg feltáratlanul, fizikailag digitalizálatlanul. Rengeteg papír, levél, másolat, audio, tehát rádióban elhangzott hangfelvételek, kazettán, és természetesen már filmek is, televíziók, amelyeknek nyilatkozott. Az úti cél nagyon egyszerű. 2019. novemberben fiammal, Kovács Riárddal már jártunk itt a Nemzeti Kulturális Alap támogatásának eredményeként. Egy előkutatást végeztünk a könyvtárban. Akkor döbbentünk rá, hogy mi minden kincs van itt. Nem kell nagy történésznek lenni, sem önjelöltnek, hogy az ember el tudja dönteni. A magyar történelem számos részletkérdése teljesen más megítélést kaphatna, ha ezek az irathagyatékokat egyrészt tartalmilag sikerülne feldolgozni, és hát az örökség szempontjából netán, ha nem is az eredeti példányt, de a másolatokat Magyarországra hazavinni.
When I was younger, I used to run around our house up in Maine, and in the attic just discovered kind of these old documents, and then we had copies of my grandfather's book, and I found that, and I remember bringing it to my father, and he sort of took that as a moment to be like, you know, you have an important grandfather. And so I think I just kept asking questions, and then the time when I knew it was I had a really important grandfather was when I was at school and I had a teacher, this was when I was in 4th grade, we all had to give like a little, report on our family history. And she knew from my older brothers how important my grandfather was. I sort of knew, but she kind of encouraged me to like really, really reach out. And it ended up that my dad came to the school to actually kind of give a report to our class, and he brought in probably some items from the actual collection, to be honest, but showing the Life magazine, showing the Evening Post, and various photographs while he spoke with us in the 4th grade class. So that's kind of when it all hit me that like, okay, like I don't just have an interesting grandfather, that there's maybe a little bit of a legacy there.
Tisztában volt azzal, hogy milyen drámai körülmények között hagyták el a nagyszülei és az édesapja is Magyarországot, amikor ide kijöttek Washingtonba?
So, around the same time I learned about the history, my dad kind of kept that part out. And it wasn't until I was probably a teenager, 12 or 13, when, again, kind of just going through, documents and I think online searches, when I realized that it was my dad, that, yeah, he got kidnapped. And so for a long time I didn't realize the details and how dramatic it was. To be honest, it's still a little bit, that's what I was kind of reading the most of in the collection, is sort of the days leading up to it and the immediate aftermath, because I think in general there's still, that's what history is, right? Trying to figure out and discover that truth. So there's still some questions, that I have just in general from the family point of view, but no, I mean, for a long time I didn't realize how dramatic it was. But then when I did, I had a lot more questions.
Arriving at New York after the fall of his government, former Premier Nagy of Hungary. For a time he was separated from his small son, but on resignation of his post they were reunited. In an obviously difficult situation, it is essential for Hungary to live in future on peaceful terms with all her neighbors.
Kérem, meséljen a szüleiről, mivel foglalkoztak, hogyan éltek hétköznaponként.
My dad, really smart man, and my mom, she was born in Massachusetts, in a town called Fitchburg, so that's in New England. They met in Boston when my dad was going to school at Boston University. He was working at basically what they call like a soda jerk. So it was like a little diner, and my mom kind of, saw him one day being really kind to, it was a couple that would come in, sorry, not a couple, the mother and then the son, and they didn't really have much money, and so she would buy one tea bag and then share it between the two, cups of tea, and my dad would just kind of slip him an extra tea bag. But as far as like what life was like growing up, my dad, he was a lot of things. He worked at Digital, a company in Merrimack, New Hampshire. He was in human resources there for a long time. He worked in the insurance industry for a little bit too. And then he kind of struck out on his own as kind of an entrepreneur, opening up a sports sort of business in a small town called Hollowell, Maine. And then after that, he basically worked kind of, odd jobs and anything that he could. Unfortunately, he wasn't really into technology. So I think he always felt that his skill set didn't necessarily align with maybe like, the modern world. So he was always doing a lot of more people person type jobs, working with basically selling things to people, because he was really a natural salesman. I guess he got that from my grandfather. And then my mom, she did a lot of, kind of just, mom, home, typical American stuff, worked, some hours as a secretary or administrative assistant, and then, but mostly her job was to take care of the 3 boys, so myself and my 2 older brothers. So daily life, man, when you have 3 boys in a family, a lot of it revolves around them. So we were always playing sports. There was always some sort of an after-school activity that they would run around to and take us to. And besides that, it was just a lot of, trying to get together as often as possible as a family, doing various things. It could be as simple as watching football together on a Saturday, or, going to watch my mom ring bells at church mass during the Christmas season. There's a lot of things that were going on. I mean, kind of a typical, upbringing with, the occasional bouts of drama that come with having two boys, or three boys, so two older brothers, I should say.
Kettő fiú testvére van, merre élnek, mit csinálnak, mivel foglalkoznak a fiúk?
Yeah, so I'll start with the oldest brother, Steve. He lives, Ishvan, yeah, he lives down in Ashland, Virginia. So that's about an hour south of Washington, D.C. He works at Fidelity Investments, so a large financial corporation. Basically, he's been doing finance for as long as he's got out of college. He was an accounting major. So he has a family of, 6 kids, his wife Nicole. So what he does, aside from working, I mean, he's a family man. So he's constantly, taking care of the kids, making sure they're having fun, but also going to school. And so that's Steve. And then Alex, he's up in where I grew up in Gardner, Maine, and that's where we lived for a long time. So he lives there with his partner named Kelly, and they have 3 children also. And they are still younger, so he's taking care of him. He works at a bicycle shop. He's very mechanically inclined, and basically it's the same thing. Their family, comes first, so there's a lot of making sure the kids are getting to soccer practice and hockey practice and all that stuff. And when we were growing up, it was really awesome having 3, kind of 2 older brothers in the house, because there was always something to do, there was always jokes, there was always laughing, there was always just something going on. It's a little different because Steve's 10 years older than me and Alex is 7 years older, so I was very young, but it was still good. And now we talk about maybe once or twice a week, depending on the situation, at least texting all the time too. But that's how things go. I mean, they're down, they have their family to take care of, and, but we still make an effort to make sure that we can at least all talk to each other.
Járt már Magyarországon, mi ösztönözte, hogy pont oda látogasson? Milyen élményekkel zárt az utazást?
It was, in one word, amazing. I loved just sort of the atmosphere. Just immediately, when the second I set foot in Hungary, I don't know, there was a moment of feeling at peace, or kind of felt like the story had kind of come full circle, because I'd heard so much about it. We had started off, we were in Austria, so we took a train from Austria to Vienna to get into Budapest, and right from the train station all the way to the hotel, it was just me gawking, because I'd heard so much about this beautiful city, and it did not disappoint. And so yeah, when I was there, I made sure to, of course, visit Parliament and do as many things as I could to, see kind of what was going on with my grandfather and if he was kind of there or not. And so between various museums and Parliament, it was really, really, really cool. And I felt almost a bit honored to see that his legacy is sort of still being, kept, and people are still recognizing, sort of his importance in the history of the Magyar people. And man, it was, and then I can't get over how beautiful the city is. The bridges, the walking, so many photos. It was gorgeous, breathtaking, amazing, all in one. I took a nice photo of the gold ashtray holder, the ashtrays that they have for those cigars. I don't think they allow smoking in there anymore, but part of me was thinking I could see my grandfather putting his cigar down in that ashtray and kind of going into session, and then, coming out, and I thought that was a fun, like, I don't know, you're not going to see that in the United States Congress, I know that.
Mivel foglalkozik itt most New Yorkban?
I went to school, I was in college, I was an English major, and I got out of school and went into journalism. I was working as what they call a copy editor / paginator. So basically I would be designing the front page of like a newspaper. So the written word has always been something I've loved and been fascinated with. So then from there I ended up going to magazines. That's how I ended up in New York City. I lived in Brooklyn for 14 years, working at a cigar aficionado magazine, and basically wrote, and covered the cigar industry. And so I did that for a long time, 14 years, like I said, and then I decided during the pandemic that I wanted to switch careers. So I went back to school for a little bit, and now I'm what they call a content strategist at a large finance company called Northwestern Mutual. So they have an office here in New York, and I live in New Jersey, and I'll come into the city every now and then or work from home, and basically that's kind of my day-to-day work life. Other than that, I have a fiance, and Natalie and I were getting married next August, and at some point we do plan on going back to Hungary. Just not sure when, but it's in the cards still.
El tudná elképzelni azt, hogy hosszabb, rövidebb ideig Magyarországon él, ott dolgozik, netán érdekli-e a politika, a diplomácia?
Politics, I've always had a big interest in that. I mean, basically, when I was a kid, where I grew up in Maine, very small state. So I still remember having, a standing member of the Senate coming to my little tiny elementary school to speak with us. So it left an impression on me that, and then especially combine that with learning about the legacy that, I've always been interested in politics because despite what everybody thinks, it all affects us. Some sort of policy that gets made now, 2 years from now, we don't know necessarily how it's going to, the consequences of that policy, right? So there's something fascinating about how we have this sort of giant, mess of humanity, but we're all come together and follow something called government. And so I guess short answer, politics has always interested me. Would I ever go into politics? Possibly. It's always been a fascinating sort of a thing. I feel like I do appreciate sort of our leaders who are able to do it well. Just seems that there's not a lot of great leaders nowadays. But as far as living in Hungary, yeah, absolutely have considered it. One of my earliest questions to my dad was, would we ever go back? And I think it was a very tough and difficult question for him to sort of face because there's just so many emotions and so much, sort of gravitas that goes with answering that. But I think for me, personally, I think enough time has passed that yes, I would like to go over to Hungary. Would I get involved in Hungarian politics? That's I don't know if that's my place, but I would love to maybe live there. But yeah, I think that answers the question, right?